Mirdita zonja dhe zotrin dhe mirë se erdhët në shtëpinë e Kosovës. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the House of Kosova. After yesterday's panels, Prime Minister's fireside conversation with Rory Stewart, Democracy, Security and Governance in a New Era, alongside Carl Benedict Frey, the fireside chat on Kosova as Europe's next business-friendly nearshore node with the Prime Minister, as well as the earlier panel, Europe's execution engine, AI race. We now turn our attention to a topic that is central not only to economic growth, but also to resilience and sustainability, energy security and transition. Today's discussion will focus on how growth-oriented countries like Kosovo can design credible and bankable pathways to balancing security of supply, affordability, and EU-aligned decarbonization. Kosovo has an aging energy infrastructure which is seeing investment both in stabilizing and increasing current production as well as in diversification. As a country committed to responsible growth, Kosovo is working to ensure energy security while advancing its transition towards cleaner, more sustainable sources and technologies in close alignment with European standards. This discussion comes at a crucial moment as countries across Europe and beyond rethink how they power their economic responsibly, affordably, and securely. Today's panel will be moderated by Szarkowski, Editor-in-Chief of Diplomatic Courier, who brings deep experience at the intersection of diplomacy, global affairs, and strategic dialogue. Dr. Szarkowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arlinda. And I'm just going to go ahead and immediately ask the other panelists out by name. I had initially sort of thought about a little thematic introduction, but I absolutely do not need to do so because Arlinda did a fantastic job, which makes sense because this is much more something within, well, what she's dealing with more every day. So we actually have a really fabulous high-level panel here, which I'm very, very excited to be speaking with you all, or with in front of you all. So first I'd like to ask Ambassador Artur Lorkowski out. Ambassador Lorkowski is, he's currently the director, please right here, sir. The director of the Energy Community Secretariat, and in his current role, a big part of the focus here is looking at how to help prospective EU members align their climate and energy policy with EU policy to really kind of help to expedite the idea of membership. The next person that I would like to invite in is the Kosovan Economy Minister Artane Rizvanolli. I hope that I did the name correctly. Minister. In addition to being the Minister of Economy here since 2021, she's a professor and academic with a specific expertise in energy economy. And so she's going to have a lot of very fantastic things to say, and we're going to get some wonderful framing here. I will go ahead and also now ask Andrew McDowell to join us, please. Andrew, thank you. Andrew is the Director General of the European Investment Bank Global since 2024. He has been within that ecosystem for quite a while. Before that, he was the Vice President of the EIB. So he has a deep sense of this knowledge of how this organization works. And EIB Global, what specifically differentiates that from EIB for those who aren't aware, is that they are much more involved in investment cases along the margins of the EU. So this is somebody who has definitely an insight into what we want to talk about here today. And so for the next panelist, I would like to ask Erez Vigodman to come through. Erez is the co-founder of Terra-A, which is a hydrogen exploration and extraction company. But in addition to that, he's an experienced CEO and serial entrepreneur with expertise across multiple sectors. Where that expertise really coalesces on is on this idea of strategic transformation, operational scaling, and complex global markets. So I really feel that the House of Kosova has put together a really fabulous group of speakers to be able to speak to this core theme of how do you manage this idea of transitioning away from into a more sustainable EU-aligned sort of set of energy market practice and design. So I'm going to go ahead and just kick off with a question for you, Minister, if that's okay. Beautiful. So when you look at the energy sector today, and you compare it to when you entered office 4 years ago in 2021, what has changed most, would you say? First of all, globally, but also in regards to your priorities as a country here.
Certainly, I think we can all agree that a lot has changed over the last 4 or 5 years. We clearly had the post-pandemic energy crisis, which only became more exacerbated after the start of the war in Ukraine. At the time, we used to say we have unprecedented prices. I would say that that has not actually changed. What has changed is that the unprecedented prices are no longer unprecedented. They are becoming the new normal, and we are having to learn to actually deal and live with them. So while we speak of the crisis as something of the past, it is actually something that is lingering on, and certainly its impacts are lingering on, and not only in terms of prices, but also in terms of the time it takes to implement a project, whether it is just something as simply as purchasing a transformer, and let alone actually implementing big investment projects. And I think this is a new normal which we have to adapt, and we have had to adapt to. Back in 2022, I remember, as we were preparing for the winter of 2022, in the region, we had an anticipation that other countries in the region would prohibit the export of electricity during the winter. It never actually happened. However, there was a real possibility of that happening, and actually we were prepared for that to happen. There were actual prohibitions of other sources like wood and other biomass sources. And at the same time, Russia, but not only Russia, has weaponized continuously and increasingly weaponized energy against Europe, and it has become clearer than ever that energy security and energy dependence are actually national security. So against this backdrop, it was clear to us that relying on domestic resources is a must. So for the short to midterm, we opted for a combination of rehabilitation of existing lignite power plants and renewable energy and energy efficiency, which we saw as no regret investments, quick investments, but also that ticked all the right boxes, i.e. they were the least cost option, provided energy independence, but also provided diversification and a cleaner energy mix. Now, for those of you who don't know, when we took office in 2021, Kosova had 95% reliance on lignite power plants for electricity production. That is closer to 90 now. It is changing slowly. However, this is something that we still need to work on, and I'm sure as this panel proceeds, we'll have a chance more to talk about new technologies and new projects. But in all these ways, I would say that it is different context today than it was 5 years ago.
Absolutely. It seems as though one thing we've talked about in my work a little bit is the idea of the polycrisis, which is a series of overlapping crises which seems to just stretch on and maybe evolve but not go away. And in the face of that, resilience is what you look for rather than necessarily overcoming the crisis because it exists.
Absolutely. not getting any easier or simpler. It's getting more uncertain as we speak.
And I feel like that makes the idea of no regret investments become very, very few and far between. So if the idea of the low-hanging fruits of what can be done have been picked, then it becomes the question of what comes next and how to do that when we're privileging energy security and economic development and aligning with EU energy market rules. And Mr. Ambassador, that's something I wanted to ask you a little bit about, the alignment with energy market rules. And principles over sort of, let's say, the medium term, because we're thinking about this idea of there's not really no such thing as for sure, no risk, no regret investment. So there has to be a lot of thought put into this. So in this idea of principles over the medium term, what does the need for new generation technology and capacity look like regionally? We can think of in the Balkan sense, the Western Balkan sense, in Kosovo. And to what extent, more specifically, is Kosovo's challenges fundamentally unique or emblematic of the wider region's transition?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, thanks for having me and for this very kind invitation. Kosovo this year, 2026, is a presidency of the energy community. So you are leading this organization. So I feel like I'm home. So that's makes me very happy. And but this is also kind of responsibility of having this presidency. Minister Rizvanolli made it very clear. I mean, what is the basic assumption of the energy strategy of Kosovo? Being independent and relying on the domestic resources. This is the issue, and this is the issue of the security of the state. However, let me a bit, not discuss this issue because this is the sole responsibility of the country to develop this kind of strategy. However, to go into some more gray zones and try to understand some options which might divert from this regional context you have been alluding to. So Kosovo, striving to be independent, is still trading electricity with the neighboring country. You said that it was the threat of electricity being cut off into Kosovo, not to be supplied. Kosovo never materialized so far, and this trade is still happening. The trade is happening with Albania and other countries. It's not happening with Serbia. This is to be recognized. And this trade has a potential for the transition in terms of optimization of costs. So you might, and this would be also needed at some point to calculate whether some investments are needed or whether, for example, you can profit from some assets or from some resources which are available regionally, for example, hydro, which is the regional asset which might also be offered to Kosovo to be part of the solution for the future. The question is, however, how this trade is happening with the neighboring countries. Today, as I said, there is no trade with Serbia. Serbia is not allocating the cross-border capacity with Kosovo, which we believe of the Secretariat is not compliant with both Energy Committee and the European Union law. And this has been just confirmed by the Ministerial Council of the Energy Committee in December, confirming that this is the clear breach of the law. Not having this trade creates some costs, both for Kosovo economy, but also for the Serbian economy. The cost for the Serbian economy is more or less 50 million annually of not having the welfare gains which would come from the trade if this trade would be available. Kosovo is then trading with other countries. Let's stop for a while for Montenegro and North Macedonia. These countries still have potential to optimize this trade, and if this potential would be optimized, there is a potential of having the welfare gains more or less 80 million euro annually if the market coupling would be applied. And the most advanced form of this trade is with Albania, where the market coupling is already in place. The Kosovo and Albania markets are super coupled, and this is the highest form of the trade we can observe in the region. What I'm going to say by that there are the options of optimization of the cost for the transition. They are the options of making this transition, and these options which are being now conceptualized by the government cheaper. That would require stable regional framework for cooperation, which I believe is offered by the energy community.
Okay. Beautiful, thank you. I think that from here that transitions me naturally to the next pair of questions that I want to ask, and I'd like to bounce those off of you separately. And then what I'd like to do following that is move to a more free-flowing environment, where if there's something where one of you feels that you have something to say following the other, just let me know, and we'll let it go directly to you. I'd like to create more of a conversational environment. So, when we're looking this idea, so there's these questions of sort of trade and electricity and energy security and so on like this that definitely means that we need to be looking at more internal development. So first I'm going to think about the case for private-public investment, and for that I would like to ask you, Andrew. As the EU's climate bank, how does the EU approach the challenge of supporting these transitions in countries outside the EU? And what are the bank's strategic priorities within this when it comes to energy security and decarbonization?
Is this working? Yes. Super. Well, thank you, Shane, and thank you for the invitation to join you today. So indeed, we do regard ourselves as the EU climate bank, as you described us, and that's an important place to start. And what that means, obviously, is that both inside the EU and outside of the EU, we only finance projects that we consider consistent with the Paris Climate Agreement, that are what we call Paris aligned. That doesn't mean everything needs to be about decarbonisation, but it can't be against, at least, or inconsistent with the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And in the energy space, obviously, this limits our options in terms of what we finance, both, again, inside and outside of the EU. I mean, interestingly, just as an anecdote, so as you've said, this is my second stint at the EIB. My last act at the EIB, just before I left in 2020 to go into the private sector for 5 years, and I'm only just back at EIB about a year. My last act before I left was to bring through the new energy lending policy of the EIB, which basically took us out of the fossil fuel financing business, amongst other things. But we stopped. We had stopped coal financing a long time, but we also stopped gas financing unless it met extremely high efficiency standards through combined heat and power and so on. When I came back to EIB in 2025, my first act in coming back was to restart gas financing in Ukraine, and for obvious reasons. And I say this because we are pragmatic, and in general we do not finance things that we regard as inconsistent with the Paris Climate Agreement, except where there's overriding geopolitical reasons to do so. And Ukraine has been an obvious example of where we have set aside our exclusions in the overriding interest of both Ukraine and EU external policy. Now, in Kosovo, we are very eager to support the national climate and energy plan of the country in full alignment with EU external policy and the priorities of the energy community and the European Commission. So we are a project financier at the end of the day. So to be clear, we don't do budget finance, we don't do macro financial systems, we always just look at projects. And when we get a project for financing, we obviously, it needs to be, have the full support of the government of Kosovo, but it also needs to have the full support of the EU. So we always have to consult with the energy community in the Western Balkans as well as the European Commission. What are we looking for in Kosovo? I mean, we're looking for projects in 3 areas, and we're involved in projects essentially in 3 different areas. I mean, the first is the decarbonisation of the power system, which obviously in full alignment with government policy. Obviously our preference is to find wind and solar projects. We are involved in the preparation and financing of a number of solar projects in Kosovo right now. We're also pragmatic, so we know, obviously, we recognise the heavy dependence on lignite coal for power and heating in Kosovo. In most countries we don't touch it. In Kosovo we are actually looking at, in Pristina, how to help through technical assistance and financing support the expansion of the district heating system, as long as it is combined with investments that improve the efficiency of the power generation, so that there is no increase in emissions associated with the project. So you get more district heating with the same technology, or with a technology that improves efficiency. We would also like to find projects in terms of electrification, so in other words, reinforcing the grid, both distribution, transmission, and indeed, again, in alignment with the priorities of the energy community, interconnection, where it makes sense. And finally, we would obviously like to invest in energy efficiency, and we have invested heavily in many energy efficiency projects across the region, and we are looking at prospects in Kosovo as well. Final point, I mean, our main source of value for our partner countries is our financing terms. So this is why we are regarded as attractive. We tend to be lower cost, obviously, particularly compared to any form of market financing. Longer tenors, which is obviously in the energy space, is extremely important given the economic life of the assets are normally 20, 25, 30 years. And we can finance up to those lengths of time, including for the private sector on occasion, which obviously is impossible for the market. But it is also the technical assistance that we bring and the experience that we bring. I think what's unique about the EIB is that we are working at the same time in the most sophisticated energy markets in the world that now have 60, 70, 80% penetration of wind and solar in those markets. So we know the technical challenges in terms of what it takes, in terms of redesign of the power system, the regulatory reforms, the price stability mechanisms that are required in those markets in order to achieve that level of clean energy integration. And uniquely for an MDB, because no other MDB works in highly sophisticated energy markets like that, as well as markets that are further back in the transition. We bring that technical capacity and experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my, that's a lot to process, actually. I'm wondering about it. I think that this is something that we'll be talking about later, but I'm wondering about the sort of process of deciding sort of where pragmatism of certain types sort of kicks in. I know that's a case-by-case basis, but that's something that I think is absolutely necessary, but it's also really quite fascinating to me where that line might lie. And Erez, I'd like to turn to you on this now. Specifically, you've spent a lot of your career really transforming legacy industrial assets rather than starting from a blank slate. And that is something that is absolutely critical in this context as well. So I'm really wondering about your insights here. When you look at Kosovo, here we have abundant lignite, limited firm alternatives, and strong growth pressure. So what principles matter the most when deciding whether an existing resource can be responsibly transformed rather than phased out? Sorry about that, I lost my spot. And if it must be phased out, then what sort of ways in the transition period are there to minimize stranded assets?
So I would say from corporate point of view, focus on your core, enhance the competencies that will support the new strategy that you have been crafting. the drop and spin out everything which is not supporting the core, but by the same token, articulate new strategy, new North Star that will set a clear direction. So enhance and fix the foundation, but by the same time build kind of a new direction. Now, if I try to connect the dots in the context of Kosovo, I would say two things here. One is more general. After decades of energy transition, decades, what we are witnessing nowadays across the globe is that humanity has never burned so much coal, oil, gas, and wood in Africa. So that's the pressure that we are witnessing here is not confined to Kosovo. That's something that crosses basically the globe. And in that context, is it really an energy transition what we are witnessing? The answer is no, because the solution that we should aspire to develop is a non-linear solution. The current types of renewable energies are a linear solution. They are not part of the baseload. They are tackling just the periphery, the periphery applications, not the core applications. And basically, that's not the solution. So the pressure that Kosovo is witnessing is not confined to Kosovo. There is a need for a solution which is non-linear. And that's my second point. There is a non-linear solution. That solution is called white hydrogen. That's something that necessitates much longer discussion. But in short, that's kind of a conjunction of number of features which are disruptive. Energy density 2.4 times of natural gas, carbon-free, cost of production less than $1 per kilogram. So that's something which is very competitive to oil and gas. The big question that the more and more countries which are investigating nowadays, as we speak, the opportunities that stem from white hydrogen, United States, Canada, Japan, China, in Europe, Spain, France, in Asia, a number of countries are embarking on investigation as we speak. So the big question that people are asking themselves, where does it exist? It is clear it does not exist where all the oil and gas drillings were conducted. That's clear, because the source that generates white hydrogen is different from the source that is generating oil and gas. So where does it exist? That's where what we do, also in Kosovo, is coming into play. And I would like just to end up here with a clear statement. The Balkan in general, and Kosovo in particular, benefit from accumulations, rich accumulations of white hydrogen. So there is here an opportunity to set a new North Star, fix the foundation, build everything about your strength, about your core, current core, do everything in your power to make it more efficient, but by the same token, start to develop the new North Star. And I strongly believe that there is a new North Star for Kosovo.
All right, thank you. There were two compelling bits there. I think that there will be a potential to revisit hydrogen a little bit later toward the end. But first, I'm wondering about this sort of statement that you made about linearity versus non-linearity. I feel as though that might be something that our gentlemen from the EU institutions or the related institutions might have some thoughts on, because this does seem to say that maybe there is some sort of problematic aspect of renewables. And so I'm wondering if you might have something to speak to that. Yeah.
I mean, I take the point, and I think the point around, notwithstanding the fact that we're 20 years into the energy transition, why are we still burning more and more coal?
Yeah.
And fossil fuels more generally,
yeah.
and this has always come back to the energy trilemma. How do you balance energy security with energy competitiveness? with energy sustainability and clean energy, and we've never been able to find that balance. I think what we're seeing though recently, and certainly some of the projects that we're seeing, not just in the EU but around the world, are beginning to challenge the notion of that energy trilemma. I think what we are seeing is combinations and portfolios of energy assets, solar, wind, hydro in Europe, geothermal in some locations, also in some cases combined with options to acquire power generated from fossil fuels. But as combinations and portfolios are able to offer guaranteed offtake 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, at prices that you cannot beat from traditional fossil fuels or even nuclear. And we're seeing these projects now. We are seeing we're seeing promoters put together these portfolios that allow governments to be satisfied that they are getting energy security at a low price and meeting their international climate commitments at the same time. And in particular, solar, I think, is playing with the combination of battery energy storage systems, but combined with other sources of power, is playing a transformative role. And the cost of solar and battery energy storage systems coming down so much has made it possible to sell in certain locations, in certain regions, to offer contracts that are guaranteed for 30 euros a megawatt hour or a gigawatt hour, which is impossible to beat with gas financing or certainly coal-fired generation. So for me, I take the point, and I think it is true that for 30 years we haven't been able to crack this nut. I see in the last 2 or 3 years changes that I think are going to transform that dilemma.
But just to double down on that in a kind of a different angle maybe, look at the energy demand that stems from the race for AI. Europe, US combined, from now until 2030, just the increase. That increase, basically, is something which is very similar to the current consumption of energy in Japan in its entirety, just to understand the order of magnitude. So the solution that is required here is radical, non-linear, and it should be clear that we should think differently about the possibilities. And I would like just to reinforce that from a different angle. We are discussing energy, but we are discussing also geopolitical implications, and we're discussing also the destiny of a nation, its strategy. Nations compete. Kosovo competes. Now, the way Kosovo will be able to address the energy equation will have a huge impact on competitiveness across all the relevant industries.
And I absolutely think that we do need to be thinking outside of the box. And indeed, I think that a lot of the progress that's happened with renewables has come from some of this thinking, but we need much more of it because security is at stake. I do have a specific question for you that I'm going to come to right after this, but first, Mr. Ambassador, I was wondering if you had any thoughts that you wanted to add to that short debate.
You put me in a bit in comfortable situation because you're asking me to think out of the box, the guy who is actually proposing something which is in the box. Yeah, to put you in the box, to offer you the European Union perspective, to offer you the access to the European Union market, offer you European Union rules, and offer you actually the European model of transition. So, asking me about thinking out of the box, okay, I can do it, but still, it would be out of my professional remit, let's say that way. But yes, but indeed, by saying that, I'm touching a point which I think is quite important. At some point, Kosovo is to decide. As you said, about how to solve this matrix. approach this issue. And that's what we will be as energy community, but also in the future, as Kosovo, I hope at some point will be, progressing the negotiations with the European Union. There will be the expectations to align, this policy and align with this European Union framework. And it creates, it would create also a lot of tensions because of the energy mix, which you can observe now in Kosovo. And I'm coming from the country which is going through exactly the same process, from Poland. So we started that more, a couple of years ago. We are not at that dependence on coal. There is still, however, debate, how to move forward, which technology. Nuclear is now debated, and the process of building 2 plants has already started. Wind, of course, solar as a winning technology with the battery system is now having a quite a big push and is stemming up, in the country. So they are technologies, but there is, at the end, is the question of price of that. So this is the issue whether you want to pay for the sovereignty, because this is a price on that. Price which you can nominate in euro, in dollars. Whether you want to pay for those technologies, this is also the price for that. And this is what I have said, at the very beginning, whether we can find some ways of the optimization of this cost, whether we can lower this cost by using the strengths of Kosovo in some aspects, but also using this regional cooperation and this regional buffer from making the transition as in the context, in the regional context, so that you can some costs might be avoided, some costs might be abandoned, some costs might be shared with the neighboring countries. So they're the questions which Kosovo is still ahead, and I hope that also today's discussion will help to answer.
Actually, before your question, I would like to reflect on some of what was said earlier, and I think as I try to do so, I find myself thinking in 2 lanes. Or the contrast between the non-linear solutions, the long-term, where we would like to be, including in terms of just things like integration, electricity market integration, which Artur was talking about earlier. And the contrast of that and the constraints of reality and the here and now. And I would say thinking about innovative technologies or old and innovative technologies and what we would think about in the future, I very much agree in some sense that with the need for a non-linear solution, and going back to our discussions when we developed the energy strategy, many people said, well, okay, you have a plan for the next 10 years, but what about 2050? How are you going to decarbonize the sector in 2050? And what I always said was, we shouldn't be looking at the energy sector in 2050 in terms of today's technologies. And I think this is a lot of where there's non-linear, where there's innovative disruptions, which are hopefully coming. And I think to some extent are coming, and are because there's so much R&D, so much R&D investment going into the sector that we should see the results in the meantime. So in terms of, as an enthusiast, I would say, yes, white hydrogen sounds fascinating. SMRs probably 10 years from now. As a minister, but with this long-term view, I would lean towards something that is more realistically doable and safer bet, at the same time cleaner than what we have. For instance, we are planning to explore our geothermal potential and hope that we can use it at least for district heating. And this is something that we will hopefully be talking about later, Andrew. Or coal gasification, which we used to have in the past, and we are the country with the 3rd largest reserves in Europe, 5th in the world for lignite reserves. If we find a way to use it more sustainably, and at the same time keep affordability and energy security. Now, going back to, again, here and now, and something that Artur said a bit earlier, I'm very glad that you mentioned the electricity trade issue that we have with Serbia. This is something that, again, in these two parallel worlds, on the one hand, we aim to integrate into EU's electricity market by 2030. And this is not just our plan, this is the region's plan and the EU's plan. And while we take these decisions and discuss in the energy community, and we prepare ourselves for that, we have a parallel situation on the ground where Serbia refuses to allocate capacities to allow trade in the border between Kosova and Serbia. And the results, the impact of this is something that is very visible and very painful because it creates congestions in our other transmission line. And as a result, last year we had days, hours, where the price of connective intercapacities went up to 800 euros per megawatt hour. Normally they are €1 on average. And this was multiple the price of the electricity that we were buying. And on cold days, especially if we have technical problems in our power plants, when we have to import a lot, it actually affects and risks our actual energy security. And this is something that we need to deal with, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Artur and the Secretariat. We have filed a complaint, and we have been raising this with the Energy Community Secretariat for 5 years now. And on the 16th of December, okay, maybe filed the official complaint 4 years ago. But I was going to compliment you for actually treating it. And I'm very happy that on the 16th of December in 2025, in the Energy Community Ministerial Council, we took a decision regarding this. And this decision obligates Serbia to allow trade by the 1st of July, which will have a direct impact on cross-border electricity flow prices and our energy security. To give you an idea, last year the cost of transmission capacities for Kosovar consumers increased tenfold. And this is going to alleviate the situation. So I guess to conclude, as a policymaker, and someone once said to me about parenting, I did some of my best parenting before I became a parent. And I think the same goes for policymaking. While you have to be very much aware of what is going on and what you're looking for in the long term and evidence-based policymaking, at the same time you need to deal with a set of restraints and have to deal with issues as they are here and now, and with the tools that you have at hand, with the resources that you have at hand, and to do all this while maintaining energy security and affordability is certainly a challenging situation, but one that I'm confident that we are making possible, certainly for the mid to short term, short to mid-term, and then long-term.
Beautiful, thank you. You actually, with the first half, you touched on what I was more or less going to ask you, so I don't need to hit that question. I do believe that, are we finished in 6 minutes? Okay, so what I'd like to do then is we might skip to the last rapid fire question that I was going to ask for everybody. If we could just take maybe 1 minute each, if we can, to very quickly say, looking at a 10-year time frame, what kind of technology or source of energy do you think could be brought into play? There's something new, something changed, something evolved that already exists that could be brought into play within a 10-year time frame to really bolster the sort of triad that we're looking for, this idea of energy security, this idea of economic development, and this idea of decarbonization to get within these EU market rules, because also that's 2030 is less than 10 years away. So let's go ahead and we'll just start from me in this direction, if that's okay. So, Mr. Ambassador.
Yeah, but I will tweak your question a bit. I mean, sorry for being not obedient today. I mean, that sense, I mean, asking about Artane said that in a couple of years technology breakthrough might come, and I mean now talking about specific technologies is something which might be not very much productive. But let's maybe I would talk about how creating conditions for investments in the technology which might come. So look at that not from the perspective of technology, but rather from the perspective of the investor. I mean, who might consider investing in a country like Kosovo in the state-of-the-art technology which might appear in the horizon, or those who are already being implementable or proved to be efficient. So what you need actually the proper market conditions. You need some proper price which will pay you back. I mean, the investment in the reasonable time frame. So you need predictability, and you need some kind of stability for the business operation. And in that sense, I believe that the process of integration in the broad sense, integration with the EU brings those values. I mean, to country of the size like Kosovo, but in general to the region, bringing this kind of stability and predictability. It doesn't bring necessarily affordability. This is true, but affordability it doesn't come always hand in hand with the responsiveness to the expectations of the investors, because they expect to have a rather cost-reflective prices, which would make them keen to take the investment decision. So in that sense, the project Minister has alluded to is of key importance for Kosovo. I mean, the process of market coupling in electricity with the European Union. This process is now even more important because of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. The instrument which has been introduced by the European Union, which is expecting the exporters of the goods, but also of the electricity to the European Union to pay the carbon price for the CO2 embedded in those products. So the more integrated you are in terms of electricity, in terms of market coupling, in terms of carbon pricing, the more you are also protected from this, let's say, pro-climate instrument being introduced, globally. So, as I said, this is up to the government. We hope soon to have the full-fledged government of Kosovo and being able to take the decisions on the future of the energy sector. But I strongly believe that for these technologies you have talked about, this predictability, stability, and the integration is the very good way forward, creating the space and the good environment for investments.
That makes perfect sense to me. Thank you. Minister?
This is probably not going to be 1 minute.
Yeah,
I probably this 1 minute, so you can also.
The fourth wall's been broken.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the first one. Going forward in Kosovo, or rather looking back at the previous years, firstly, the trends. We've had growth rates, real growth rates, averaging at above 5%. At the same time, demand for electricity has increased on average by 2%. On top of that, we have space for increasing energy efficiency. Our energy intensity is twice as high as the EU average. So that means for every euro produced in Kosovo, we use twice as much energy. We've already started a lot of investment in energy efficiency, which we are going to continue. Also investing in railways, which will reduce the need, reduce the demand for energy on the one hand. On the other hand, that leaves some scope for new industries, like including mining, but also data centers in the future. How will the energy mix look in 10 years? Certainly more diversified than now, with significantly more wind and solar, which are technologies that are already being, projects that are already being developed, with about 40% more being produced from our modernized power plants, which also become more efficient and cleaner. Actually, in Kosova B2, where we had modernization of the turbine, the pollution has been reduced by 12% only with these investments, and there will be other investments which further increase the efficiency. This is per megawatt hour, of course. Geothermal, more district heating systems, because when we talk about energy constraints in Kosova, actually we often forget that this is actually due to using electricity inefficiently for heating. So what we've tried to do is replace inefficient resistance heating appliances with heat pumps or biomass, and along with district heating investments, this is going to, on the one hand, reduce, but also reduce demand for electricity, again, leaving more scope for industry to use this energy. And on the other hand, as I said earlier, we hope to use more geothermal energy over the next 10 years. And leaving the scope open for exploration and or preparation for other technologies such as I said, lignite gasification and SMRs, and why not hydrogen in the future, keeping our eyes open.
So there's definitely a little bit of keeping your head on a swivel and being ready to adapt to needs as well as a plan. That makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you. Andrew?
Maybe two points. I mean, I don't profess to be an energy expert, but just to remind ourselves, what the International Energy Agency has been saying for a number of years now, which is for the vast majority of our energy challenges, decarbonization, energy growth, energy security, the technologies already exist for the vast majority of those challenges. So the question is really about policy, is about financing, is about implementation, rather than innovation. I think it's an interesting question whether AI is a kind of game changer in that regard, and whether that's been fully embedded into those forecasts, and whether we really do need to, because of AI, think about non-linear solutions. So let's see. Again, I'm not an energy expert. We do have a lot of energy experts in the bank. It's a big area for our financing. And so the people who I listen to, what are they excited about? I think they're excited about a new generation of solar technology, even more efficient solar panels that goes beyond the silicon technology that is currently embedded. I think they're very excited also because Europe actually has a technology lead in a new generation of solar technologies, which would, I think, be good news for a lot of countries in terms of diversifying supply chains. I think they're very excited about geothermal. What we've seen in the United States, and to a certain extent in Canada, from the redirection of oil fracking technology into geothermal, and the results that has produced and the costs, the low cost at which it has been done, is quite remarkable in terms of, and that really extends geothermal to beyond the traditional areas where geothermal has been limited to, which are obviously in areas of high geothermal activity and in earthquake zones. And so this is certainly a technology that we're quite excited about for the future. SMRs, we do finance, we can finance nuclear, and we have financed nuclear in the past, both greenfield, power generation, as well as extending the life of the existing stock of assets. Honestly, there's been just a lot of talk about SMRs for the last 5 or 6 years. We've yet to see a bankable project. We've yet to see a project that makes financial or economic sense. And the biggest weakness remains decommissioning. And who's going to cover the costs? And when you cannot tell a story around that, you can't bank the project.
That makes sense to me. And thank you for stepping a bit outside your comfort zone there. I do have just a very quick question here. Europe is now producing the most efficient solar panels. Is that something that's fairly new? I've been not as embedded in energy in the last 5 years as I had been before, but to my memory, I believe it was Jinko Solar at some point was the primary, like was the like big leader in their Chinese organization. So when did this changeover happen?
So as you know, solar started in Europe, mainly in Germany and the United States. Then got transferred, obviously, to China. But there's, again, don't poke me too deeply on this because I'm not, but there's a new generation of polysilicon technology that has been patented by a number of European solar producers that apparently is going to improve panel efficiency in utility scale solar by another 20-30%. And it's an area where there's a strong lead in Europe. So we haven't seen large scale deployment of this as yet, to be clear. Yeah.
But that's extremely promising. Thank you. Erez.
So just two insights. One, I kind of spelled out clearly my view. I would just say that's not a long-term solution. That's a solution that can start generating outcomes within the tenure of the current government. Having said that, I would like to look at your question from a different angle. So when you look today at the top 20 countries in the world that are basically making the list on 4 to 5 most important economic parameters: productivity, GDP per capita, innovation index, human capital development, and productivity, and another one. So 5. The 20 top in each one of the parameters are made by 70 to 80% small countries with population with less than 10 million people. 5 most important leading economic parameters. Top 20. Each one of the parameters, 70 to 80% of the countries on that list are small countries with less than 10 million people. What I would like to convey here, just kind of a summary as far as I'm concerned, Kosovo, the size of the country is not, the converse is, so the size of the country is not a disadvantage, it might become an advantage. And in order to kind of apply that also on the case of Kosovo, energy plays a critical role. So everything that the country should do, whatever is the combination and the mix of energy sources, they should do it faster than ever. Because that's a critical role. Transversal technologies and AI is just a strong manifestation of that. It's critical today in the context of energy. So energy is critical in that context. So everything the country should do in order to kind of accelerate the pace of the development is stemming from the revolution in the energy domain.
Beautiful, thank you. I have another question for you, but that'll be for later in like off stage. I know that we're over time. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you all for your beautiful insights and for your flexibility today. And thank you all for listening.